Hey guys, it's Saoirse here for Volume 3 of Villette by Charlotte Brontë. I think I forgot to mention that it is Christmas today, so Merry Christmas. And I started the day by climbing Arthur's Seat, so I'm kind of exhausted. I did it for sunrise, and it was gorgeous. But anyway, let's get into Volume 3 here. Again, spoilers, many spoilers, and I also have on my Jane Eyre quote shirt now, because I just ran out of shirts that say Brontë, and I'll link the Etsy store for you. So this volume starts with chapter 28, The Watchguard, and I want to say in the last volume I felt like Lucy was catching fire, if you will, and now she is burning throughout this volume. So Lucy is starting to brave Paul's temper. He accuses her of caring about modern fashion and all of this, which is totally not who she is. She doesn't have the option of being a wallflower or a shadow around him. She literally blinds him by breaking his glasses by accident. But she is, I think, too much light for him. She's blinding. So he loses himself in seeing her. Then we have chapter 29, Monsieur's Fête. So Lucy makes him a watch guard, which is, I think, something you hang your watch on, keep it safe, and, for Victorian gentlemen or whatever. So she makes this for him. And he's angry that she doesn't have any flowers for him at his fête, because that's a tradition, but he doesn't know that she has an actual present for him. So she doesn't reveal it at the time, because you know how she is. Later she goes to leave it in his desk secretly, and she catches him leaving her these beautiful books in her desk. So she gives him the watch guard, and he loves it. He sits next to her at dinner, wishes her sweet dreams, and she goes and has sweet dreams. So things are definitely happening between them. We have chapter 30, Monsieur Paul. Paul believes Lucy's hiding a knowledge of Greek and Latin. He starts to teach her arithmetic, but she doesn't like it. She starts to rebel against him and his, style of teaching her. Yeah, they're just kind of like back and forth, like cat and mouse playing with each other. The next chapter is 31, The Dryad. Lucy goes to the garden to confront her feelings. How she loves to walk alone in the garden. So Paul earlier put a shawl on her while she was sleeping in a classroom, which is so sweet, but he finds her in the garden, and they talk together about the nun that Lucy keeps seeing. We have chapter 32, The First Letter. Polly tells Lucy that Graham has written to her and loves her. So Paulina and Graham, or Dr. John, are fully a thing. Lucy tells Paulina to be careful in her response, and she believes that she and Graham will be happy together. And she doesn't ever, tell the reader she's jealous or upset about, she had feelings for Dr. John, obviously. But she's really happy for Polly, seemingly. Chapter 33, Monsieur Paul keeps his promise. Paul takes all the kids from the school to a farm for breakfast, and he asks Lucy how she'd feel if he left for a few years. This is upsetting. She cries. And he looks for her later, but this woman who works at the school, I hate her, Zélie Saint-Pierre, she lies saying that Lucy's in bed. So it's always these people who are like spies for Madame Beck, who are trying to keep Lucy away from Paul, and vice versa. So in chapter 34, Malevola, this is Madame Beck trying to really put an end to what she sees happening between Lucy and Paul. She sends Lucy to Madame Walraven's as a trick to reveal that Paul can't marry because he's devoted to this grandmother of the dead girl that he loved. So he was kind of engaged to this young woman, and she went off to become a nun, and then she died. So he never married her, but he's taking care of her family and a couple of other old people who would be destitute without his help. So he's given all of his money to this. He has no money to marry. Then we have chapter 35, Fraternity. Paul takes Lucy to two men who force her to write to prove that Paul didn't forge her essay. So this makes her cry. She writes this essay about human justice, and she recognizes the men as the ones who harassed her when she first came to Villette and didn't have her trunk with her. Then she tells Paul later that she knows about his past, and he strangely asks her to be his sister, So it's like this constant frustration, like, why don't you guys just get together? They act like they're going to be brother and sister and, you know, good friends. Like, there's this brotherly bond, I don't know. Chapter 36, The Apple of Discord. Paul ignores Lucy for a couple of days. He gives her a Catholic book, takes her to these religious ceremonies, says his friends warn him against her being a Protestant. She tells him she doesn't want any part in these Catholic rituals. Chapter 37, Sunshine. This is where Polly's father asks Lucy about Polly and Graham, and Lucy can't lie, and the father freaks out. And then Graham shows up, and they talk, and the father decides to let Graham marry Polly. Lucy then tells us about their happy future and concludes that some lives are blessed. She tells us that they do get married, you know, they have children, it's very happy. Then we have, you know, the next chapter with her saying, you know, it's not like that for everybody. Chapter 38, Cloud. Lucy stands up to Madame Beck and asks to be left alone, but then Madame Beck drugs her, straight up gives her, like, possibly opium, and Lucy becomes too excited to sleep, so she sneaks out of the school and she walks to this park at midnight and sees this huge party going on with all these people that she knows. She hears Mrs. Breton and Polly's father saying that they should have invited her. And she sees Madame Beck and all of her friends as well. So here she is. This is like the ultimate, like, her watching stuff and not participating, because she is super drugged up at this point. Chapter 39, Old and New Acquaintance. So she's still at this party in the park. So she continues to watch Beck and all of her friends until this young girl arrives with Monsieur Paul. So Lucy falsely believes that Paul is going to marry this girl who is his 18-year-old ward. So he's pretty much her guardian. So she becomes jealous and finally finds something she can't view as just an onlooker. Like, she actually really feels this and she's upset about it, and she recognizes that. She returns to the school and finds the nun in her bed, which she tears apart, and then realizes it's just a nun's clothes, with a note for her saying that the nun won't be seen anymore. We have chapter 40, The Happy Pair. This is when we find out that Ginevra has snuck out of the school because Lucy left the door open when she left in her drunken stupor, or not drunken, but drugged stupor. So Ginevra sneaks out to marry this count, and she reveals in the note that it was, she sends Lucy a note, and it reveals that it was this Count Alfred d'Aumale, who was dressing as the nun the whole time so that he could come and visit Ginevra. So he's been terrorizing Lucy so that he can visit his girlfriend, which is great. And then she tells us about Ginevra's future and how she never learns to do anything for herself, and she's just married to the Count. Chapter 41, Faubourg Clotilde. Paul finds Lucy and means to talk to her, but Madame Beck keeps interrupting. He shouts at her and takes Lucy on a walk to a little house. He reveals that he's leaving it for her. It's to be her home and her school, because Lucy expressed this desire to start a school of her own. Like, that was the only dream that she could think of for her life. He says, blah, 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 this girl named Justine Marie will be a pupil. Justine Marie is also the name of the woman that he was going to marry, but it's the same name as his ward. And Lucy explains her jealousy, thinks that, you know, he's going to marry this girl, so why would she want to teach her? And he says, no, you know, she's engaged. I would never. She's like a daughter to me. And then he asks Lucy to one day share his life, and the next day he goes off on this journey. He sails overseas, and it's never really explained, like, why he has to, or maybe I missed something, but he has to go. And he's going to be gone for a few years. Then we have chapter 42, Finis. This is the last chapter. Lucy tells us that her school has prospered in Paul's 3-year absence. She receives money from Miss Marchmont, the woman that she took care of in the beginning of the book. She does actually get money from her. And then she buys the house next door, takes on boarders. She prepares for Paul's return, but this horrible storm sweeps through the Atlantic, and we are to believe that he shipwrecks. So she leaves the end up to interpretation by not disclosing details, and she allows us to imagine them happy together for life. And I learned that, the reason that she doesn't straight up say he's dead is because her father, Patrick, wanted her to write a happy ending for the book. He couldn't stand for it to be a sad ending. He liked heroes and heroines in fairy tales, marrying, living happily ever after. But she had this idea that Paul did die in the shipwreck, and she couldn't get that out of her head, so she wrote it in a way that we could interpret it how we want. Okay, so let's see if we can get through these. Page 334. She calls Paul this harsh little man. And she's talking to herself here. You are well habituated to be passed by as a shadow in life's sunshine. It is a new thing to see one testily lifting his hand to screen his eyes because you tease him with an obtrusive ray. So that goes back to what I was saying about how she's too bright for Paul, like she's this light in his life. And she's very much not used to that. 345. Paul says to her, false and cold, I don't think you are. Don't suppose that I wish you'd have a passion for me, mademoiselle. What do you start for? Because I said passion? Well, I say it again. There is such a word, and there is such a thing. So he's really, he keeps, sparking her to wake up. Feel what you feel. I know you feel passion, and I know that your soul is on fire. Page 361. Courage, Lucy Snow, she says to herself. Is there nothing more for me in life? No true home? Nothing to be dearer to me than myself, and by its paramount preciousness to draw from me better things than I care to culture for myself only? Lucy Snow, the orb of your life is not to be so rounded. For you, the crescent phase must suffice. So still, even though she's clearly falling in love with Monsieur Paul, she is telling herself to stay chill, basically, and, not feel anything. Page 383. I, too, was happy with the bright day, happier with his presence, happiest with his kindness. So this is when they're eating breakfast at the farm, and she's just really happy to be around Monsieur Paul. 407. I grew quite happy, strangely happy, in making him secure, content, tranquil. So it's this is her new purpose, where before she was just really caught up with keeping Dr. John happy, which, Dr. John, get out of here. You're gone. You're basic. And Monsieur Paul is definitely, as much as we might have not liked him in the first 2 volumes, he's clearly what she needs to bring her to life, finally. To admit that she has feelings, and she always had. Page 437. Oh yeah, this is where she says, I do but speak the truth when I say that these 2 lives of Graham and Paulina were blessed. It was so, for God saw that it was good. So she's basically saying, God does not see me as good or deserving of a good life. But certainly Polly and Graham can have it. 449. Instead of stupor came excitement. This is in reference to the opium. So, Madame Beck clearly thought that it was going to make her just go to sleep and stay out of her way and not come near Monsieur Paul again, but instead she gets worked up, she gets excited, because most of her life, think about it, she is kind of living in a stupor. And sorry, but Caddy is so cute on my lap right now. And Springer is all in the presents. They love their presents they got today for Christmas. What was that, 449? So 452. It gave me, what am I looking at? With the sudden magic. I have no idea what this one was. Oh, it gave me strange pleasure to follow these friends viewlessly, and I did follow them as I thought to the park. This is her again being a watcher, watching her friends at the party in the park at midnight. And then 454. Safe I passed down the avenues, safe I mixed with the crowd where it was deepest. To be still was not in my power, nor quietly to observe. So she's saying, now she's so worked up with this drug, she can't quite be the silent observer that she always is. She says, I took a revel of the scene and drank the elastic night air, the swell of sound, the dubious light now flashing, now fading. As to happiness or hope, they and I had shaken hands, but just now I scorned despair. So again, she's like, really, like, in this kind of manic, frantic way she's feeling, because that's the only way that she can feel, for it to scare her. It has to scare her. Page 455. In this outer rank I took my place. I rather liked to find myself the silent, unknown, consequently unaccosted neighbor of the short petticoat and the sabot, and only the distant gazer at the silk robe, the velvet mantle, and the plumed chapeau. Amidst so much life and joy, too, it suited me to be alone, quite alone. So still she's among all these people, and she is by herself. Page 460. This is when she sees Madame Beck and her friends, which includes Madame Walravens and the priest that she gave the confession to. She says, they outnumbered me, and I was worsted and under their feet, but as yet I was not dead. So she knows that all of these people are kind of out to get her. They are against her and Monsieur Paul being together. But she says, I was not dead yet, you know? So she still had a fighting chance, and I think at this point she realizes she is ready to fight. 465. I just love this. We may gasp in untold terror, but with that gasp we drink in a breath of thy divinity. Our heart shakes, and its currents sway like rivers lifted by earthquake, but we have swallowed strength. To see and know the worst is to take from fear her main advantage. So she's confronting fear. She's confronting the worst things that are trying to come between her and happiness, and in that way she takes away fear's advantage. Page 468. This was an outrage. The love born of beauty was not mine. I had nothing in common with it. I could not dare to meddle with it, but another love, venturing diffidently into life after long acquaintance, furnace tried by pain, stamped by constancy, consolidated by affection's pure and durable alloy, submitted by intellect to intellect's own tests, and finally wrought up by his own process to his own unflawed completeness. This love that laughed at passion, his fast frenzies, and his hot and hurried extinction, in this love I had a vested interest, and whatever tended either to its culture or its destruction, I could not view impassively. And I circled this and said, this is a climax, like this is one of the climaxes of the story, where she finally realizes, oh, she's jealous that Monsieur Paul, in her mind, is maybe going to marry somebody else. She cannot stay chill about this. She's upset. 480. I could not meet his sunshine with cloud. If this were my last moment with him, I would not waste it in forced, unnatural distance. I loved him well, too well not to smite out of my path even jealousy herself, when she would have obstructed a kind farewell. So finally, she tells us that she loves Paul, because this whole time it's like, are they friends? Are they brother and sister? What's going on? No, she's in love with him. And she finally says it. And then on the next page, 481, she's trying to talk to Paul, and Madame Beck keeps trying to get between them, and Lucy says, pierced deeper than I could endure, made now to feel what defied suppression, I cried, my heart will break. And that's another climax I wrote. Yeah, she finally can't take it anymore. 482, he was roused, and I loved him in his wrath with a passion beyond what I had yet felt. So now she's using all these words, roused, wrath, passion. She's feeling. Ere long I sat beside him once more myself, reassured, not desperate nor yet desolate, not friendless, not hopeless, sick of life and seeking death. So she's finally alive and happy to be alive, or at least, like, happy that she's not dead. 487. In such inadequate language my feelings struggled for expression. They could not get it. Speech brittle and unmalleable, and cold as ice, dissolved or shivered in the effort. So this ice is dissolving as she's talking to him. Her words are not enough to get across what she feels for him. Warm, jealous, and haughty, this is 491. I knew not till now that my nature had such a mood. He gathered me near his heart. I was full of faults. He took them and me all home. For the moment of utmost mutiny, he reserved the one deep spell of peace. These words caressed my ear. Lucy, take my love. One day share my life. Be my dearest first on earth. This makes me cry. And then I'm just going to read the last few paragraphs of the book, page 495 to 496. This is the shipwreck. The skies hang full and dark, a wreck sails from the west, the clouds cast themselves into strange forms, arches and broad radiations, there rise resplendent mornings, glorious royal purple as monarch in his state, the heavens are one flame, so wild are they. They rival battle at its thickest, so bloody, they shame victory in her pride. I know some signs of the sky, I have noted them ever since childhood. God, watch that sail, oh, guard it. The wind shifts to the west. Peace, peace, banshee, keening at every window. It will rise, it will swell, it shrieks out long. Wander as I may through the house this night, I cannot lull the blast. The advancing hours make it strong. By midnight, all sleepless watchers hear in fear a wild southwest storm. That storm roared frenzied for 7 days. It did not cease till the Atlantic was strewn with wrecks. It did not lull till the deeps had gorged their full of sustenance. Not till the destroying angel of tempest had achieved his perfect work would he fold the wings whose waft was thunder, the tremor of whose plumes was storm. Peace be still. Oh, 1,000 weepers praying in agony on waiting shores listened for that voice, but it was not uttered till, when the hush came, some could not feel it, till when the sun returned, his light was night to some. Here pause at once. There is enough said. Trouble no quiet, kind heart. Leave sunny imaginations hope. Let it be theirs to conceive the delight of joy, born again, fresh out of great terror, the rapture of rescue from peril, the wondrous reprieve from dread, the fruition of return. Let them picture union and a happy succeeding life. Madame Beck prospered all the days of her life. So did Père Sila. Madame Walravens fulfilled her 90th year before she died. Farewell. The end. So she gives the last couple of sentences to these other people, these people who were her enemies, basically, who didn't want to see her happy. But before that, she tells us the story of this shipwreck, and then stops herself amidst this beautiful description, this beautiful and tragic and haunting description of what was Monsieur Paul's fate. And she says, no, let's just let you imagine that he did come back. You know, he was saved from the shipwreck. We were reunited and happy forever. But we know that's not true. Throughout the book, Lucy makes references to the fact that she is much, much older now and telling this tale looking back. And we know that she is alone. So, that's it. That is Villette, Charlotte Brontë. And I even have my other copy here. This is my original copy for undergrad. It's very special to me. The first time I read Villette, it was this book. And I have many, many more editions back in Florida, and I wish I could show them to you, but unfortunately they're not here. But yeah, I collect editions of this book, and it is my dream to have a first edition copy of Villette, which was actually published in 3 separate volumes, so it's 3 books, and it's like thousands of dollars. But that would be so beautiful. So I don't even know what to say. I love this book so much, and it's mainly because I really relate to the character of Lucy being a wallflower, and you know, maybe that's why I love Perks of Being a Wallflower as well, because I really relate to Charlie. So this idea of like having to hide and just watch, and knowing that this happiness that you see other people experiencing is never going to be yours, and you should just be okay with the fact that you're not severely suffering. You're simply alive, and that's enough. So make yourself content with that. I feel that way so much, and when I read this book, there were things that just spoke to me that I'd never been able to put into words myself, and you know, from that moment when I finished the book, Charlotte Brontë was my favorite writer immediately. Villette became my favorite book immediately. It is so powerfully and poetically written. If you have watched all of these videos for some reason having not read the book, please read it, give it a chance, and if you've just read Jane Eyre, like, know that Charlotte also wrote other things, and they're just as brilliant. I'd say Villette is even more brilliant. So please go out into the world and read the Brontes, read Anne, read Emily. They were such talented, incredible women, and their story is so interesting. Like, if you want to dive into their lives beyond their fiction, the Brontes were very interesting people. So thank you for sticking with these videos. I had fun making them. I had so much fun reading the book. I mean, I don't know if you'd call it fun because it's very sad, but it is such a moving experience and I cried a lot. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Merry Christmas.